Good morning, everybody. This is Dana B. with my buddy Charlie Markert. We are the 3% from Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries right here in Winchester, Virginia, Frederick County. And before I get started, we have our good guest today, Bill Wiley, who is our delegate here for Frederick County. And before we get started, I want to just throw it out there. This Saturday is really important, folks. We've got our Wake Up Winchester Health and Freedom Conference number 8. Yeah, we've done well enough that we've actually done this 8 times. And it's a little bit more on a civics level where we're going to be able to talk to people, like we're going to talk to Bill today, about the different positions that are in our government right here in Frederick County and what they actually do. Most people go to the polls and say, who's the Democrat or who's the Republican? But they have absolutely no idea what that position entails. So we'll be doing that kind of thing this weekend with our sheriff, with our Commonwealth attorney, with one of our delegates. We also have George Washington that'll be back. It's been about 250 years, but he'll be there. I don't think his horse is going to make it, though. That's for sure. We have the Liberty Man. We have Ann Craftatus and Sheila Fury talking about education. And we have a nice celebration of life for Frank Funes, a good friend and Mountain Patriot of ours, David Sparkman, and of course, one of our founding fathers of Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries, our good friend and family member and brother, Rick Choi. So we hope you all can make it out there. We have a nice sweepstakes going this weekend for his and hers. So come on out. It's at 252 Costello Drive at Millwood Fire Department Bingo Hall. And it's 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. We'll run to about 7 o'clock. Come on out, have some fun, meet the vendors, and meet the people that actually run our county here. So I'm going to turn it over to my great friend, Charlie, our co-chair for Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. Like I said, we are the 3%. And I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Charlie and Bill.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dana.
Charlie.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Bill, thanks for being on today and giving us your time.
Yes, sir.
And thanks for being in the arena.
Yeah.
The man in the arena is the one who gets things done. And we greatly appreciate that. Well, we'd like to know a little bit about who is Bill Wiley, where you came from, what your worldview is, how your thinking works, and then tell us about what you do, what you've done, what you're doing before politics.
Okay. I'll try to be as quick as I can on this.
Sure.
So I'm originally from Roanoke, down in Roanoke, Virginia, Southwest Virginia. I was born and raised in the city till I was about 7 and moved out to the county, lived on a farm with my brother and sister and my parents. And then we all went away to school, my siblings and I. We all went away to boarding school. I went away to boarding school in Northern Virginia at the ripe age of 14. And then I went to college, undergrad at George Mason University, got my undergrad in economics.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to study under the Nobel Prize winner Buchanan. So that's where I studied. And then I got into coaching football. Always enjoyed it. And being around kids in the high school area around the college. And so when I left, I went to work for my stepdad in manufacturing down in Columbia, South Carolina, just something to do. I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And then I realized my calling was to be a teacher and coach. So I went back to get my master's in education.
Excellent.
And I continued teaching and coaching in Northern Virginia at some of the big high schools. And I taught math. Unfortunately, in the 90s, they brought in the federal government started mandating the SOLs. And it just took the love of teaching away from me. And so I left teaching, unfortunately, and I still miss coaching. I'm still involved with my kids, of course, but I left that, and then I got in the internet business, the .com boom. We all made a lot of money and was a lot of fun. And then that whole thing exploded. And then my wife to be and I, we moved out here to Winchester area back in 2001. In fact, it was the month of September 11th, which really opened my eyes and saying, thank you for getting me out of there. I've never been a city boy, so I was blessed to move here, but I was a compromise for me and Katie. We moved here as she didn't want to be too far from her family from Maryland, and she didn't want to go to Roanoke. That was too far. And certainly I wanted to be out of the city. So it was kind of a compromise. And we rented a house from the Bird family. I had no idea who the Birds were downtown. And I got into real estate and construction, started building homes and selling real estate. And then I got involved with boards and commissions. The Board of Zoning Appeals is where I first started serving my church at Christ Episcopal, where we got married. Um, and then I also, started the construction stuff down the valley. I was mostly building homes in Shenandoah County, and I did one project up here in Frederick County. But those were the easy days of building homes before the crash. And
Mhm.
Katie got in the banking business, and then we started having a family. And so we relocated to another home downtown, and then, everything was going well until the crash. And literally, it was bad. Lost everything. And my partner went bankrupt, left me with all the debt, and I had to work out a lot of things with banks and kind of getting my life together. And so, fortunately, after 10 years of slogging through that and working in different commercial construction companies, this is where I started to kind of change from residential to commercial. Started repping business for some of these guys in the valley, doing design build deals where I would go find the dirt. I'm a broker by trade in 2 states. So I'd go out and find the dirt, and then I'd build the building for them and hand the keys to them. So I did that. And then in addition, as I mentioned, I continued serving in the public. And I always believe that service is important. I didn't mention that I did serve in the military. I was in the reserves. When I left high school and went to college, there were 3 things that I didn't have, considering I went to an all-male school. There was women, there was money. I had money, and I had a brand new truck, and it was a recipe for disaster. So my GPA wasn't too good. I got thrown off campus. I got in a lot of trouble. And my grandfather was a colonel from the Army, and they suggested I go in the service, and that's what I did. So I finished up my service, but I continued to serve in the community. And I always believe that it did 2 things. One, it was gratifying, and the other piece was it opened doors to meeting people and getting to know the community. So got on planning commission after BZA, and then continued in the commercial construction industry. We started, like I said, we have 3 boys now and having a family locally. And then in 2013, I had Jeff Bittner, who's now the EDA director. You probably know him, and he used to be a councilman for 4 terms. He'd been on there forever. He came to me and said, "Hey, you'd probably be a really good council member. You might want to consider running for my spot." And took some thought into it, talked to my family about it, and away we went. And I got elected to council. I got a new job with Howard Shockey and Sons because I needed to be closer to home. Got a new dog, and we relocated to the parade route on Stewart Street all in 1 month. So
Wow.
you can imagine the change that we went through was pretty quick and a little crazy.
Do you still have your truck?
Well, I've had different trucks since.
Okay.
I love it.
So anyway, I started serving on the planning commission. I was the chairman, and then I became a council member, and then served on council for 6 years. I was president for 1 year until we had a change of the guard from blue. We went from red to blue. And then an opportunity showed up. The Lord works in funny ways, and how things like that happen. My predecessor, who's now a judge, Judge Collins, came to me and said, "Hey, you'd be a great delegate." And I'm like, I don't even know what a delegate does. And to be perfectly honest, I've never even.
Now you know why we're doing Wake Up Winchester. I don't know what they do.
Well, that's very good. I mean, that's very true. I mean,
it is true.
It's sad, and I never was a history guy. So
Right.
the Capitol, I've never been to the Capitol, and so when I won the special election, it was COVID. And they invited me down to get sworn in, where I was only allowed to bring 10 people down.
Wow.
So I brought my family of 5, and then I brought 5 of people that helped me with my campaign. Went down there to get sworn in. When I walked in the chamber at the Capitol, I looked up and I was like,
wow.
"Oh my God, what have I gotten myself into?"
Right.
And I actually got very emotional because it was something bigger than the chambers in Winchester, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Jefferson seats, all these guys that were leaders in the past had sat in the seat that I was getting ready to sit in. So away I went, and I started learning. It took me a while to start to learn the ropes, considering it was COVID. You couldn't meet people.
Couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
Delegate Gilbert, who used to be was our leader, and of course was the Speaker of the House, took me under his wing, and then I started learning under him. And
Excellent.
yeah, so I've been doing it for it's been about 6 years now. And over that time has been a huge learning curve, a huge way to get to know people, the relationships you get to know, and then the learning process, the learning curve is tremendous. But at the end of the day, it's still about service, right? It's
Right.
about giving back to your community. And that, as long as you have that mindset, as long as you have that understanding and appreciation for that role, um, that to me is what's gratifying. And so that's where I am now. I'm certainly running for reelection. I'm not done. People say, how long or what's the next step? I'm like, well, I'm
I
finally
got to
getting,
serve. I'm
yeah,
still
well,
serving.
I'm finally getting some traction for what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm on the committees that I want to be on, appropriations, general laws, and transportation. I'm finally making a difference. I'm finally getting in those rooms where there's a saying that a lobbyist said that I thought was perfect. He said that the people that make the decisions are within rooms, within rooms, within rooms. So because what happens is it becomes a small group of people in the GA, meaning from the Senate and from the House, that get together and they work through policy. I'm finally getting into that room. And so that's where I really want to make, really kind of want to do something for our
Excellent.
area. So I hope I answered some of your questions so
Oh,
far.
yeah, yeah.
Bill,
That's great.
that was great. I
Yeah.
mean, we've all got, I mean, anybody that's gotten anywhere has built it all up, lost it, and rebuilt it again. Okay. That's what
Yeah.
makes you sharp. I mean, it's what makes you sharp.
I
And you're
call it the
right. You start to get into,
most
and
expensive learning lesson ever was what I experienced through home building.
yep, yep. And you made a really good point when you said, well, I should go for delegate. Well, what does a delegate do? Well, that's why we're doing these podcasts, because we're interested. We want to serve as well. And I hope we're doing a good job for Frederick County and the areas around here. But we wanted to make sure, like we're doing Wake Up Winchester, what does the delegate do? What does the
In
councilman do? What
in
does the sheriff do? We don't know. So we're going to do this and we're going to educate people, because we're all in this position that we're in right now in 2025, because most of us stop paying attention to what people do and
Sure.
just go make the money and do their thing and hope it all works out. And then one day I'll retire. And then Charlie and I at that spot going, wait a minute, how long can we do this? Charlie, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, in that context of what do you do is also how do you do it. So,
Okay.
what are some of the things that you've accomplished
Oh, yeah.
down there that you can put in that
Yeah.
context?
Yeah. Great
Good
question.
question.
Yeah, it's a good follow up. So, like I mentioned earlier, you kind of get put into your lane for what you're good at, right? So,
This is
and
great.
then you also try to, I mean, the committees that you serve on, but you also try to do things for your area based on the need. Every area throughout the state of Virginia has different needs, right? So,
Right.
so for our area, certainly we're in a huge growth pattern. So we have to figure out how to mitigate with transportation. How do we get more money to benefit for our schools that are growing, and all the other impacts that are related to it. So I have been a staunch advocate for 81. When I've been working on it, I've sped up some funding for this area for that. The policy there, I'm on the committee, and I've actually got a study in right now with the secretary on trying to find ways to do it cheaper. I'm finding in other states they're doing it cheaper. So that's one thing I'm working on. I do a lot of veteran policy, considering I served, and I've
Excellent.
always have a strong allegiance to those guys. So I've done some policy there to help them out financially, along with some cemetery rights and some other stuff that it's not real sexy, but it's stuff that it really helps them out at the end of the day. I've done some policy. I'm looking at some of the things here. Um, I mentioned earlier about the Shenandoah River. I got some money to clean up the Shenandoah River in terms of the algae bloom issues we're dealing with there, working with the USDA on that. I do a lot of small business, just what I call single hits, just things that we go in there to kind of clean up. Big issue that we're fighting right now are PLAs, project labor agreements, collective bargaining. Those are on the doorstep, and I'm trying to fight them to keep them from coming into Virginia, because we are a right to work state. And if it does so happen, which, considering how the votes pan out this year, they could get the access, and it would drive a lot of our industry that we've worked so hard to locate here in the Commonwealth it would push them away, push them
And
further south.
it would end right to work state.
It would. And so
Do me a
if you,
favor, Bill, because a lot of people don't understand that.
yeah,
Okay, which is why we wanted to have come on. We get it. So the project labor agreement, real quick, explain to people what that actually means and
yeah.
how that would affect our right to work state.
So in certain counties, they've already enacted some of these project labor agreements. And then what that is it's basically allowing these agreements to be put into play. And what it does is it raises the cost of labor to
Mm-hmm.
benefit certain trades. And so at the end of the day, when you have a project, that project is going to go up X% based on that project labor agreement. There is value there. I get it. It does guarantee a labor resource. That's kind of the good thing about collective bargaining and unionization. It does offer that availability of labor force that sometimes is not really readily available because it's whether they're busy or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still you're paying a premium for that labor. And so at the end of the day, when you add up all the different divisions of work for that type of construction job, it drives price. And at the end of the day, we're the taxpayers. So guess what? Guess who ends up paying
Comes back
for it?
to us.
So
Right.
we are the ones that, at least on our side of the fence, that we're fighting it. And if you look at our revenues so far for fundraising, Republicans versus Democrats, the Democrats are outspending or outraising us almost 3-1, and they're not getting the money from within the state; it's coming from out of state.
Absolutely. Well, this is a big state right now. I mean,
Well,
they're
we're only
looking at Virginia
there's
right now.
there's only 2 races this year. It's Jersey and us, right, in the
Correct.
state races. So
They're watching us.
I hope that our great president sees that because I'm concerned. I'm concerned about our economy right now and what's going on internationally. And so I'm trying to get him to be like, can you get everything worked out by September so that the tea leaves are looking good for us? Because we
We
are in a
think
purple
so.
state. We are in a purple state. And so it's going to be challenging.
We think that there's some pretty wild stuff that's on the horizon.
We
A
hope
lot
so.
of this is exposing what's going on and what's
Oh,
happened.
I
Because you're
completely
right.
agree.
It's all about getting money from everybody else. They buy seats. You
Well, I
know,
appreciate what Musk has done. My Lord, the federal government is so bloated, and we certainly can do that with certain agencies in the state of Virginia.
it's
I
coming.
think there's a lot of cleanup we can do, and I'm not done there yet. There's some angles that I want to push for the state to make it more efficient and less costly for the citizens. So I'll yield back, Charlie, for your questioning.
Just want to
Okay.
make one point. You hit something real important, Bill. Um, we are trying to clean up the state, but what's really cool about what Trump has done is the fact that you've got people like Charlie and I that we paid attention, and now all of a sudden you have more people that are paying attention. So when people start to pay attention and they understand what's going on, they'll do something. They don't do anything unless it hurts.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good
And
point.
now it's starting to hurt. So finally, you don't do anything about cancer until you have it. Unfortunately, you don't take care of yourself. You don't go to the gym. You don't know you don't do anything. You're like, oh my gosh, I have this problem. Now I'm going to do something about it. So this is a big wake up period. Again, wake up Winchester. A big wake up period for people to understand what's going on. And hopefully we can mobilize everybody to come together and work as a community. So it is really important that they're waking up. Go ahead, Charlie.
Dana,
Yeah.
why don't you tell the people a little bit about this Saturday?
Well, that's a great point, Charlie. Let me see if I can share the screen here. And of course, because it's Wake Up Winchester and we have everything going, it seems that everything happens to you that'll mess things up right before you do something big. But we have Wake Up Winchester. It's 6/28/25. It's this Saturday from 11 to 7. We have Wayne Schneider that'll be out there blowing the shofar and doing the prayer. Darla McCrary, this is what I mean by waking up. She's talking about the need to know about the updates on the fluoride in water. Do people understand what fluoride actually does? There's some good uses for it, but too much can hurt you. People don't understand it. We got the principals of Weston A. Price Foundation that'll be there. Our 6th District Chair, John Massoud, is going to talk about what the chair does. We want people to understand. An update on our district in Virginia. We are actually feeding people pizza. So for the $20 that you're paying, it's only covering what the cost of the room and the food. We have Charlie Markert as George Washington. Like I said earlier, he won't have the horse. I'm sorry. Larry Johnson is the Liberty man. When you talk about the history of what's going on here, there is nobody more animated and historical than Larry Johnson. We have the sheriff that's coming out. People want to know, what does the sheriff do? What is a constitutional sheriff? There's a difference. Okay, there's a difference. So Sheriff Milhon's going to talk about what the sheriff does in your town. We have a good friend of yours, Bill, Dolores Oates. She's a firecracker. I love Dolores, and Emily Wendell will be there with her. But she's going to talk about the responsibility of the delegate. Okay, Rodney Wine is going to talk about what the heck is going on with the elections. People don't realize that Trump is about to turn. We're going to have the spigot open on what happened in 2020. I think the elections are going to come out fair this year because there's a lot going on behind the scenes people don't see. We have special speaker Ann Kraft Hatis. It's all about the children from Parent Team 6. We have some great networkers out there covering prep stuff and so forth. Dr. Sheila Fury is going to talk about the altar of Moloch, about watching your children. We have Chris and Debbie Cloud, who do bonfires down in Marshall. They know everything pretty much that's going on with the Trump administration and the Republican Party and where we're going as a country. And then we're doing being prepared, the 5 things that people right now need to be carrying with them for their own safety. People, if you watch somebody at Walmart, they get out of their car, they look at their phone with their head down and walk in. Okay, where are their kids? What are they doing? Where are they going? Are you paying attention to what's going on? So we've got that coming up. And then there's all the events on our website about all of the Frederick County Board of Supervisors, Small Business Freedom Alliance. All the dates are there, what's going on with the public schools. Help keep us going. If you can't make it, make a donation. Okay, because all of the money that we get goes back to the community. Okay, which is really important. You know, we got our admin we've got to take care of. But come on out to Costello Drive. And then there's a little form at the bottom. What do you think about what's going on right now? And then all of the videos that we do with everybody is right here. So anything you want to know about anybody that we've interviewed, Bill, like you, we've talked to Dolores Oates, we talked to John Reed, we've talked to a lot of different people that are in office right here. So we want people here in Frederick County to understand what makes things tick and how they can get involved. So, Charlie, I'm done with my Wake Up Winchester spiel.
It was great.
How's that? That's a lot.
That was good, man. That was good.
Woo!
Woo!
You're on mute, Charlie.
Charlie, you're muted.
And my wife puts all this together. So I got to give a shout out to Barbara, that girl. She's done a phenomenal job.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah. Thank you, baby. You're on mute, Charlie. Charlie, you're on mute. Oh, yeah. See,
Yeah.
we're professionals at this. We've been doing this for 100 years.
Yeah, right. My voice, I need to clear my throat every now and then. I've done it too many times on the air. But anyway, we know you're in the minority in Richmond, and it's a close by the numbers, but being in the majority makes a big difference. How do you find to yourself dealing with the minority to have an impact? How do you get them to do some of the things that we conservatives want to see done?
Sure. That's a great question. So this year, I have been recognized as the guy that got most policy passed through the minority.
Yep.
Good.
Now, a lot of that, I mean, if you look at some of the policy I got passed, it's not real, political. And if it's political, you're done. There's no way. They'll cut that in half in the subcommittee. And if you're a rabble-rouser on the floor or in a committee meeting, they'll stick a knife in you that way too. So you have to be very strategic about how you get policy done, how you can sway the other side to get your votes that you need to get done for the General Assembly. Because at the end of the day, you got to get through both chambers and you got to get to the governor. So if it's political, if you're a person that stands up and points the finger at the other side, you're done. And so I've learned how to kind of dodge bullets, keep my head low and just try to try to push through. And at the same time, I mean, when we're not in committee or we're not on the floor, I'm out talking to these people. I'm talking to the other side. I'm with them at night. I talk to them. I mean, they're human just like we are. Granted, we don't agree with a lot of things, but if there's something I can find a way to maybe help them out that really won't adversely affect what our policy beliefs are, at the same time that, I can help them and they can help me, maybe we can do a deal. And so there's a lot of that going on throughout each day when we're down there. And so
you don't want to burn any bridge.
No,
you don't.
Nice.
And you don't want to upset the chairman of those committees. And the most important person you don't want to upset is the speaker, because he has the ability to shut you down quickly. So, and Speaker Scott and I are, we get along great. I know he likes me when he calls me Wile E. Coyote. So I get along pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah. How do national issues find their way into to what you guys do in Richmond? How much of a consideration is that when, and most of them, they're not all political. I mean, like supposedly the border isn't political, but yet it's made to be that. How do you guys deal with the national issues?
Well, I'll give you a good example of what's going on right now. So we have an ad hoc committee that is addressing, what DOGE has done and how it's going to impact the state of Virginia's budget through appropriations. And so this group kind of keeps their finger on the pulse with the federal government, and then they kind of look working with the appropriation staff in terms of how it's going to impact our budget so that we can figure out how to balance our side of the equation. So that's one good example. When you mention the border and some other things, like the Democrats are well known. Like right now, their big campaign push in primary world, and now they'll be going against, of course, our side. Anything to do with anti-Trump, they're going to push the buttons there, right? So anything to broadcast him as a bad guy, they're going to push the buttons there. And they also always push abortion, taking away rights away from women. So if we, and so those are the two big hot buttons. And what's going on internationally with Iran and all the wars and stuff there, I wouldn't say that's really affecting. That doesn't affect us much. The top three big things that people vote on, right, is number one is the economy, right? And that's the reason why Trump did so well, was because they knew, the voters knew, the independents knew that, Harris was going to be a repeated Biden, and they knew that more money was going to be taken out of their pockets. So they realized that Trump was the answer. And then the second one is crime. If my neighborhood's safe, whoever I'm voting for keeps my neighborhood safe, that's what I want. And then the third one, of course, is education. They want to make sure their children are taken care of when they go to school. So if we can hit those three buttons, right? So when Governor Youngkin won, he won on education, right? That was parents matter. That was the big thing for him.
Right.
And then another thing he really did a good job was with the economics, considering that's his background. So we need to have the momentum coming in September. And I think I mentioned to you this earlier about with Dana, that, we got to have by September, we've got to have this economy going in a good way. We've got to have stability in terms of keeping our neighborhood safe. And we got to have this educational component where all this transgender, all this crazy stuff, we got to get that worked out. And so we need to push the messaging that way moving towards November. So it's timing, guys. People have short memory. So we really,
They do.
We need to have it timed exactly when we kick off.
Do you see anything of benefit in terms of being able to accomplish that stuff shutting down, or at least reducing the impact of the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education? If more money is just going to come to us with less strings, does that need to be then responsibly grabbed onto by Virginia in the absence of federal?
Yeah, I mean,
or will that even happen?
Question.
Well, that's a good question, and that's the problem with the federal government when it comes to funding. There's always a string attached, right? And so, we always try to educate and articulate and logically look at this stuff and tell the public, hey, this might sound great, but at the end of the day, it's going to really adversely affect us for XYZ reasons. The other side would paint it differently. They would look at it not logically, but they would look at it in terms
bright and shiny,
taking your money away. Right? They're taking the money away. I'm like, we're not taking the money away. We're looking at this in terms of how I want to balance my checkbook. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how we do it.
Right.
Logic in the other side is, it's not the kind of logic that you would think.
It's emotional logic.
Right.
Exactly what it is. And so you could talk to these people as you're blue in the face down in the General Assembly sometimes when I'm talking about policy. And I realize I'm talking to somebody who just doesn't get it. And they don't want to get it.
And they
So
don't want to get it.
I'm moving on. That's the way it is.
And
So-
my favorite is because. Because what? Well, because. And I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Right.
I'm done.
And then they get very personal about it. And I look at
Very
them,
personal.
I say, don't make it personal. This is, to me, I treat it like a lot like business. I mean, you have to make it business. And
It's a business decision, right? It's not personal.
when we get done with policy, for example, if I carry a bill and it gets shot down, I don't hold a grudge to the other side, whoever shot
Right.
it down. I'm like, it's another bill that didn't make it through. We're going to move on. Well, maybe I'll try again at the next session. But you got to move on. And because when we do 2,500 bills a year, I mean, we go
Right.
through a ton. So,
Well, if you mess one up, there's a grudge.
and
I'm never going to
I
want
don't
to
hold
talk to that
grudges.
person again.
Yeah.
That could
We
be
have
called
people-
road rage.
Yeah. We have people like that down there, and it's kind of sad.
It is sad.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is a lot of this stuff really became apparent right at COVID. Okay. We started to see the difference between emotional thinkers and rational, logical thinkers.
Right.
Okay. And I'm not picking on anybody, but I'm telling you, when you go out there right now and you're still seeing people wearing masks, and they're up to jab number 5, 6, 7.
And they wear them below their noses, which I never understand.
And you're like, turn off. Yeah, it's funny because I was listening to Trump last night and he was actually blasting MSNBC and CNN because they were talking about all the bombs in Iran. Okay. And you can't have nuclear. Oh, they're going to get us with nuclear weapons and so forth. And then we took them all out and they're like, oh my gosh, now it's, well, he didn't really do it. And now it's, oh my God, they could build a weapon again. So it's always this emotional, not even backed by anything, talking points.
No, you're right. You're
and
right.
And people buy into that because such and such said it, it must be true. We have a saying in Mountain Patriots, we don't expect you to believe anything that we're telling you. We don't. Go do the research. Go look it up. Go
Validate.
Take a look. Like the high school. Take a look. What are the numbers? How many people are actually here? What would it cost us to do this? Can we afford it? What would it cost the taxpayer? Not, well, because I want a new school. I want a new bike.
You're exactly right. And I think there was an article in the paper this morning or a letter to the editor, which I thought was pretty spot on. And that is, get the facts.
Get the facts.
And I tell my kids, I'm like, when you read stuff, make sure what you're
look it up.
Well, yeah, make sure that the person or individual organization is writing something that's valid and trust but validate, right? So or trust but verify. And
trust but verify, exactly right.
And I took a class like that in college. It was public theory and argumentation, and it basically was all about that. Yeah. Where did you get your information, and how you going to do your argument? If it's from a reliable source, you can use that information. And that really kind of educated me in terms of the stuff that you read out there, because there's all kinds of stuff out there now that's just bad.
Because I said so.
That's right. And
and such told me. We see it in schools, because my teacher told me, and this is I know you were school teachers and you talk about SOLs, and we're going to talk a lot about that stuff on Saturday. But your kid goes to school and they're an Eagle Scout or whatever, and all of a sudden they go back to college and they come back and it's, what happened to my kid? What, because my teacher told me that this is the way it's supposed. There's no backup. There's no proof, and sometimes, especially now, there's so much stuff that's written. You literally have to go back in history a lot of times to find where things actually started to get to this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You really have to, sometimes we really have to dig.
Speaking of schools, they changed over time from not thinking about whether it was a corporation or government to the point where the school started teaching that government is the answer and corporations are bad. And I found that out 30 years ago. I saw it being taught in Fairfax County. And it just surprised me back then that why are corporations bad? I mean,
Yeah.
every nonprofit is a corporation, but the kids were coming out with that mindset that government is the answer, and I think that has done us damage. So it's that kind of thinking that I'm worried about in our schools that are using DEI, using a variety of tools to change the culture, change the thinking of our children. Is there anything to help bulletproof our kids so that they're getting an education, not an indoctrination? And do you get involved in any of that at the Richmond level?
Well, unless it hits the floor, see, I'm on the education committee.
Right.
And so I don't see any of that until it comes
And
to
it
me.
means a lot, whatever committee membership you've been able to garner
Yeah.
as to your impact, right?
And how
Yeah. I
can we
mean,
help that?
well, you got to be down there voicing, you speaking your voice. And I can't stress that enough. As I tell people, I'm like, if you have a policy matter that really is near and dear to you, or
You have to
could
go.
affect your business or whatever,
Right, right.
I need you at the Capitol testifying in committee. Because it really means a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
we had, oh my God, we had probably 1,000 people in a committee room regarding these convenience store, what do you call them, slot machines. Those are all the owners of these convenience stores, and those guys had a lot of power in there. I mean, fill the room
Yeah,
up.
1,000 of them. That's a
I mean,
lot of people showing
it's
up,
one
isn't
thing.
it?
It's one thing for an email. It's another thing for a phone call. But if you're in
But you
person
show up.
and you're in my office, you spent 2.5 hours to come see me, another 2.5 hours to go back home. That means something to me.
It's the same as
Yeah.
banging on doors as opposed to a phone call.
It's
You
exactly
know,
right.
I want to
Personal.
talk to somebody. I want to see
Yeah.
that
So if there's
person.
something, if there's something you really are, really got your heart set on, I'm going to hear from you, and I,
Yeah.
need you to come down and talk to the committee. That's important.
What else you thinking, Charlie?
Well, you
Oh, I
were we
did have a
got kind of
question.
pulled off. Well, go ahead, Dana.
Because you were talking about, I'm here, we're getting a lot of rumblings about, this is how I look at it. We're looking for a fast fix, okay, to try to make sure that everybody's okay. I mean, we've literally ruined our economy. Okay, especially over the last 4 years is absolutely insane. We're watching it with Doge and everything else, but we're hearing a lot about a casino that
Mm.
could go up here. And or data centers is another one. Boy, we get a nice big hit real quick, but we have 578 data centers in Virginia, okay, already. How does that impact us? And then the other part would be a casino. Now, it might be a nice when I think casino, I think number one, whether you go gamble or not, I just think evil. Okay, that's just there's all kinds of stuff that comes with that. Okay, and crime, and it might be a nice quick hit when it's nice and clean, like Atlantic City, and all of a sudden it's gone, and everybody's going trying to bail, shovel themselves out of garbage they put in there. What are
Yeah.
you hearing down there about casinos and so forth that could hit
Well,
Frederick County?
the casino policy, we allocated 5 licenses, and they've already
Mhm.
been sucked up in some of these big cities. And if you look at where they were placed, a lot of them were placed in economically depressed areas,
Yeah,
Bristol,
or they
Danville.
sell lottery tickets.
And if you look at the clientele that gamble, it's not the people that should be gambling.
No.
And then the other piece to it is, I mean, in the first 5-10 years, they produce money and they generate a lot of revenue for the municipality in whatever it can assist with, whether it's education,
Right.
public safety, or transportation.
That's how it's sold.
But I don't look at it that way. I look at it in the long run. And if you look at Charlestown, if you look at Atlantic City, as you mentioned,
Baltimore,
those places are
Maryland.
terrible. Yeah. I mean,
I grew up there. I watched it happen.
it's just a money suck. And the city's been talking about putting a $500 million casino to replace the mall. And first of all, it's massive. That's just huge. I mean, that dwarfs anything. It's almost the size of Valley Health. I mean, it's massive. So that's one issue I have. you're taking away from downtown. What's going to happen there? We put all this money into downtown. You're parking it right next to a university. That's going to adversely affect the student body. I mean, could you imagine the parents of the kids? There will be waitresses over there. I could
Oh,
imagine. Um, and they're not going to share toys with the county. City only wants to get the revenue. And I'm like, well, my voter base is in the county mostly. And my voter base is pretty conservative and they're religious minded. And I've talked to some of the major stakeholders in the religious community, and they're aghast when they hear this.
yeah,
Uh,
we are.
Maybe a smaller footprint of something where we can get our hands around, where it's, gambling's in this, we have it in the state, it's here. Now, how we go about putting it into play and how it benefits our community is another thing. But I don't think a solution with a massive casino right off the highway with all these lights and everything else, I just don't think that's the solution. I know that, there's always talk about a convention center. I get it, but is this the right use? Is this the right use to replace them all? That's a good question. And so they have a study group right now doing it, and I appreciate the EDA for doing what they're doing. And maybe they have an answer that I haven't figured out, or a question that I haven't thought about, or whatever. But where I look at it right now, and all the GA members in the Valley, we're adamantly opposed to it. And we'll see how the sirens out. They're supposed to come back, I think, later on at the end of the summer to kind of figure out, kind of where they're going to go next steps. But at the end of the day, it's got to be either me or it's got to be Senator French who's got to carry that policy request. And neither he or I are willing to do it. So we'll see what happens. To your point about data centers, I've looked at these facilities. I've walked them. I've been in and out of them. I've talked to several of the guys that develop these type of facilities. Yeah, I mean, they're great for revenue. But you have to be very mindful in terms of the impacts, right? So the water, they've gotten very smart with the water systems. They use more of a gray water system. So it's kind of checking the box there. Some of them still want to use regular water, which is an issue for our area, and it's an issue for me.
Got to be pristine.
The other
700,000 gallons.
Yeah. And I think the project on the south side near Stephen City was just too big. It was massive.
Even the board was like,
there was a lot of water usage, and in an area that really wasn't ready for that type of use. It was not a good fit. The other piece is noise, and they've gotten very smart with these baffle systems. Barely you can hear them off the road if you drove up next to a data center. So they've gotten smart with those. And then this third component, which is the biggest component, is power.
Mm-hmm.
These power companies won't allocate unless they have available power to run to these systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I work a lot with Dominion, and right now Dominion is full. They can't handle any more need. We're at the point right now where there's rolling blackouts that are close to being occurring in the state of Virginia.
Oh, yeah, because we use more power than any other state in the country.
But we're close. I mean, this past winter when we had that cold snap, they said it was the closest they've ever been.
Unbelievable.
Do we need all forms of energy? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need just renewable? No, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We need more gas power plants. We need more small, medium reactors. I went down and toured the nuclear facility down in Lake Anna. These are very efficient. Yeah. They're very efficient. They produce very little waste, and they produce a tremendous amount of power. The problem is the federal government, it takes 10 to 12 years to get a daggone permit. So we're trying to. I
think we're going to see some stuff change there.
Well, we're trying to speed that up, and we need more locations for those type of facilities. And then this fusion system that's going on in Chesterfield, that's another great way to kind of mitigate the demand where we have to get ahead of this demand curve, which we're really behind. So to your point about driving revenue for our area, I think the data centers can be located in areas where they can benefit, from an industrial park. Do I want 100 of them? No. Can we use 3 or 4 of them? Yeah. But it needs to be done right. And then, it could generate enough revenue where it could help out with our impacts that they're dealing with right now. But like I said, it has to be done smartly. And I think that the supervisors have done a good job of kind of, putting the zoning in for it. But like I said, it has to be a good fit to make that work.
You just said something about the supervisors, and it's real easy to point fingers at people, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out ways to work with them. But a lot of this stuff, Bill, was done 20-something years ago, and nobody really thought. This is what we're finding, and correct me if I'm wrong. We're seeing that people didn't look to the future. They looked at the present, okay, but didn't look out 10, 15, 20 years. If I, when I was 20, 25 years old, I was putting money aside because I figured one day I'm going to be 60, 65, 70 years old and I'm going to need this. You don't live for today. And I think I'm seeing a lot of you, for lack of better terms, being hamstrung.
Mhm.
Okay. That's how I see what happens with the Board of Supervisors. I see it kind of happen with the school board. We watch it happen with the high school. Do we need a high school? That became an item of contention. Do we need one? Do we not need one? How are we going to pay for it? We got to cut hamstrung. How do you see us being able to? Let me back up a little bit and ask this: with all of this going, knowing that, how could we all work together, and how maybe would proffers with the growth that we have and impact fees maybe somehow work with that? Does that make sense? I'm just seeing what's happened 20 years ago and where we are now. How do we get past it? And the
Yeah,
point
an
of growth,
impact fee that continues to be able to cover operations, not just
right?
Yeah.
that first amount.
And we constantly grapple with that in the General Assembly in terms of how to modify the proffer matrix.
Hmm.
Our municipality has the ability to raise those proffers, but the problem is that they're kind of one-time hits. They're not continuing, right?
Right.
And then you
And
have
we're
to be
not
very.
even close to covering that
Right.
one-time
Loudoun
hit.
County raised theirs another $100,000, I think, for a unit. It's crazy over there, but
Wow.
they have the ability to do that.
We need about $37,000 per house
That sounds about right.
right
But
now, and
but
back then it was $1,000 per house. So there is no fire
Right now
department,
it's
there is no
about
police, there's no
17,000, I think.
they can
there's no
raise those. They can raise those limits, and I've told them they can do that. Um, but to the point of if somebody wants to move in the area and you ding them on a settlement sheet for, hey, since you're moving to the area, we're gonna ding you for an impact fee. That gets into kind of personal liberties and some rights that
Mhm.
are constitutional, and so we got to be very careful on how to do that too. So there's a balancing act. There's
Right.
another way to do it too. You can also do it. You can tie it to infrastructure, and we've seen that done in other municipalities as well. So it would go to fixing a road, or would go to whatever it may be that's tied to that development that's impacting that area. You can
Right.
earmark for specific type of impact expenditures. So but but to your point, you got to look at this stuff 20, 30, 40 years out, and you got to forecast. And as I said before, as supervisors, as when I was on city council, and heck, when I'm as a delegate, I'm not there to make easy decisions. I'm there to make hard decisions. But the reality of it, when I make that hard decision, I'm looking at it moving forward. I'm looking at it what's best going to benefit my community, my constituents. Sometimes it might not feel good right now, but I know that 10 years from now, people look back and they say, you know what? Delegate Wiley probably had the right idea in terms of how to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the reason why I probably have a lot of people that don't like me sometimes. I get it. That's what I
They don't
signed
like
up
us
for.
either.
But hey, that's what we signed up for, right? You're elected to make decisions, and you're not going to please everybody.
You
Um,
can't.
I call it drinking in the closet. I just don't get out much, and that's what it is.
I've never heard that, but that's pretty good. I'm drinking in the closet.
So yeah,
So
I,
how
I
can we help you, Bill? How can
well, I
how
just want to finish by saying one thing, and Charlie, we kind of danced around this international stuff and national and even
Yeah.
local. And one thing I want to say is we've gotten soft. Our kids have gotten soft.
way?
And I'm concerned probably more than I've ever been in terms of the direction of our country, in terms of our youth and the next generations that will be taking on, carrying the flag for us.
The kids.
Yeah, and
It's
they
all about the kids.
take everything for granted. I mean, we're so divided now in our country and even in our state. And you would think that, going to war or a pandemic or something like that would bring us together. And it's actually has driven us further apart.
Yeah.
We talked about electricity and power. I looked at Dominion Power the other day, and they said, the other side wants all these renewables. We just can't do it. We can't do enough of it to keep up with the demand. I said, just shut the power off. And they said, what do you mean? I said, shut it off. And I said, they'll figure it out. Because when it gets hot and you don't have power, it gets uncomfortable, just like when it gets cold. But if you shut it off, and that's their only form to keep this crazy thing going, right?
Doesn't
And
that wake people up? That's the pain that you
wake
have
up,
to
right?
feel.
So I'm
Right.
I'm one of those guys where we need to go back to some of these fundamentals and getting these people to understand that it's a privilege to live in the United States. It's a value. It's we have with the greatest country in the entire world ever.
Ever.
But yet I think we take it for granted now. And I
What
am
are some of those fundamentals?
well, I mean it's our rights, it's our freedom, it's our ability to go out and drive a car when we want or take a walk without having somebody tell us where we have to walk or we can't walk or
Right.
What we can
um,
say.
do what job I want to do, and live where I want to live. All these great things, and I look at what's going on now. I mean, if you see the guy that's running for mayor in New York,
Oh
good
my
God,
gosh. No, Namani or whatever his name is.
he wants to
The
control
list is
everything.
socialism 101. He's
And
not
I'm
going
over
to
there
win.
going, and people believe that. Wow. So I want to close by saying this, and I don't know how we get past it, and I think a lot of it has to do with parents, raising their kids accordingly.
And people being
Um,
involved.
I've always believed that our children should serve, and
Mhm.
and they do it in Israel, they do it in Switzerland, they do it in other countries where you have to serve, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to serve in the military. I don't mind if you serve in Red Cross, make whatever nonprofit, but you got to go out there and spend time to serve back to the country so you can appreciate it and understand what the values that we have that come with it. And I think that's important. And I kind of want to close on that, but I think that's one thing that we need to instill in our children.
Well, I think that's a great idea.
Yep.
That should be. Um, is there any traction with that? Is that an idea that's up in the cloud, or is there some reality to considering that to make it happen?
Well, we've always talked about it, but then people get all fired up about, you can't, don't tell me what to do with my kids and all that crazy stuff.
But
And
they already are.
I know. Oh, in a different way, in a worse way,
In a
right?
different way. They're already telling you what to do with your kids their
Yeah.
way.
So it's a scary situation. But I just want to say that. I mean, I look at what's going on overseas, and then I look at our children and how they're reacting to it, and it's almost like it's just nothing big. Um,
It's kind of a cycle. When we have prosperity, that breeds weak people because
Laziness.
they take things for granted.
That's exactly right.
And then weak people breeds conflict, and then conflict breeds strong people. And so the cycle
And
goes.
and you're right. It is. I'm trying to get the camera here. It is a cycle, right?
Yeah.
If you look at it from history in our country,
Yep.
and that's what scares me to death right now because we've been riding it like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but
There's always that pendulum, isn't there?
that's that pendulum. And I always caution my kids and others. I'm like, you got to be ready and you got to know what to do. And so
Be
Absolutely.
prepared.
that's right. But hey, I'm here to keep doing the good job for everybody in our district, and I'll keep fighting the fight. What I've been doing, and certainly to try to benefit our constituents and our businesses, and appreciate you folks going out and getting the word out and your energy, and certainly that's great what you do. I appreciate your time.
Well, we
and if there's
we thank you for your service.
yeah,
Absolutely.
We know that this is a part-time job, and to get people
Yeah.
to volunteer to do this is not easy.
well, serve. I'll keep preaching it. Serve. Continuing to
Serve.
serve.
Get
Yeah,
involved.
and
I can't say it enough.
you don't mean do you want fries with that?
Yeah,
Right.
go out and make a difference. Go out and make a difference in your
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
And it could be anything. I'm not saying you have to be a politician like me. Just go out and do something and make a
So
difference.
how can we help you keep doing this?
Well, I mean, going out and preaching the word, getting people to vote. I know right now everybody's kind of exhausted from the last election, and then coming up, we've got a general election, which is really not a big election in terms of every year. This is not, it's not a presidential election. But we have a governor's election coming up. We have top of the ticket.
This is a big deal.
We've got all the delegates. So we need to go out and sell that and drag people to the polls, make them vote. It's our right. It's the ability to exercise what you believe in and vote accordingly. And then I just ask people to research the candidates. And I think, you guys hit on it earlier. Don't just vote because he's blue or red. Vote because of the person's credentials and what they've done and what they believe in, and see if it aligns with what you believe in. And I think you'll find at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, you'll be making the right vote.
Vote from here and here, not here.
That's right.
Who should? Because we all work the polls, Bill, and it's funny. Last when we had our last race for governor, people were pulling in, going, "So who's running for president?"
My God.
That's next year.
That's next year, right?
Or who's the Democrat? Who's the Republican?
People always look at me. How's Congress? I'm like, I'm not in Congress.
Right. But this is why we're doing this. We want people to know. But you're right. People have to serve. Get involved. If you're not going to do something, you don't have a right to say anything unless you stand up for something.
You're exactly right.
What is it? Lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Stop complaining and get to doing. That's what I always tell people. And I even have constituents that'll start complaining with me on the phone. I'm like, you know what? You're very passionate about this subject. How about I get you involved with this X committee?
Oh no, I don't have time for that.
And then it gets awfully quiet. I'm like, you there?
Yeah. It's too funny.
Well, look, guys, I got to jump.
Yeah, we do too. I want to thank you real quick. We've got our Patriot prayer. We'll let you go, Bill.
Yeah, please.
I want to thank everybody today for watching and for Bill Wiley being with us here today. And we're going to end with the Patriot prayer.
Okay, let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful world and this country that you've given us, and the patriots who are willing to care for it. Thank you for inspiring our founders to create this beautiful republic. Please help us to keep it as the aspiring place to live. Please give us the wisdom to do the right things, the common sense to judge wisely, the energy to never give up, and your unending grace in which we take comfort. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. This has been a wrap. Guys. Thank you, Bill. Have a very blessed day, and we will see you real soon. Have a great weekend, guys.
God bless.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.